Can't wait to wrap. Let's wrap it. Hey, Happy New Year. Let's wrap it up. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, the Chicago Cubs podcast. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. There's Adam Mamawala. We're back at
Now, was that safe sex advice for the new year, or was it about the podcast?
It can be both. We can. It's weird, but most of our baseball takes, if you take them another way, it actually is good sex advice. So
that's true.
It's a thing. It's sort of an Easter egg we've thrown out there for people. So
yeah, and I'm just realizing it's wild to say it out loud. This is the sixth calendar year that we have been talking about the Cubs into microphones.
I would have missed that by 2. If you asked me to guess, I would have said 4. I would have missed it by 2 full calendar years. Is that true? So this is because I guess, did we start in 2017? Is that it, or 20?
We started in maybe I don't know how to count. We're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of doing this.
I got you.
But it's like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't argue with those numbers. You can argue with plenty of numbers the Cubs are giving us so far, but follow us at Away Games Pod on all the things, on Twitter, on Instagram, and all that good stuff. And today, what we're going to do, we'll tell you a little bit about it off the top. We're going to talk about 2 new Cubs signings. One is very confirmed. The other isn't as confirmed because Eric Hosmer's wife is waiting for Mike Pence to do the right thing. So that is still not officially ratified yet, I guess. But we're going to talk about the 2 new likely Cubs signings. And then we're going to do a little bit of a check-in because Adam and I have both found our enthusiasm for this moment of Cubdom kind of waning. We are going to tell you what the Happy New Year of 2024 looks like from Cubland. So we're going to do that. Yeah, we figured doing a Cubs New Year's resolution would just be redundant in terms of everything that we've said they should be doing for the past year of this podcast. So we're going to do a hopeful, well, maybe it won't be hopeful, but we're going to do a future check-in. What will we be saying a year from now? Yeah, a next year's resolution, kind of, Right, yeah. So I don't know. Do we start with reality first, I guess?
Yeah, let's start with the actual signing that has happened.
Sure. Okay. Let's start with Tucker Barnhart. Tucker Barnhart is the player the Cubs signed. They're trying to answer the question, what if you made the whole team out of pretty decent backup catchers? And we've got that with Yan Gomes, which one part of what was so frustrating about letting Wilson Contreras go to me was because I thought the Cubs really handled the catching position great last year.
Yeah. It's one of the first times that they've done that in a long time, like arguably since when they had kind of like a Montero, that weird 3-headed Montero Contreras as he's coming up and Ross situation.
Yeah. And at that time, they still, I mean, I guess that was once we got to the World Series, Schwarber was no longer catching, but even like Schwarber was a catcher coming up through the pipeline there. Right. So we had a bunch of exciting catchers then. So now we've signed Tucker Barnhart. If you don't know about Tucker Barnhart, let me give you a quick rundown. He is 32 years old. He's going to be playing this season at age 32. He's a 2-time Gold Glover. He won the Gold Glove in 2017 and in the shortened 2020 season, which still counts, although I do feel like the Gold Glove should have like 3 fingers on it, from that.
The old Mordecai.
Yeah, it's a Mordecai 3-finger brown Gold Glove in the shortened season.
A brown glove. We'll give him a brown glove.
A brown glove, that makes a lot of sense, especially for this team. And then if you want to know why you would sign a Tucker Barnhart, you sign him because you believe in the wizardry of catching that cannot be explained. You believe in like game calling. I think we all believe game calling is a real thing. There's sort of no way to really quantify it.
Yeah.
But he's a guy who's good clubhouse rep, good game caller. He must be Adam, for Tucker Barnhart to continually make several $1 million a year. This guy must call the best pitches. Like, it must be crazy because you think of him, you think of Gold Glove. What do you think when you think of a Gold Glove catcher, Adam? Describe to me who you picture in abstract.
Gosh,
the qualities. It doesn't even have to be a name, but like the qualities of a Gold Glove catcher.
The qualities of a Gold Glove catcher are calling a good game, like working well with pitchers, having a very strong arm, excellent framing in so much as that's a thing, which it apparently still is. There are umpires who fall for the old tricks.
For sure.
Very few pass balls, holding runners. Those are all the things that come to mind.
Yeah, and while I don't have every those, that's a great answer, and that is pretty much exactly what I would think too. And I don't have all those stats for you, but what I can tell you is last year Tucker Barnhart, by Fangraphs WAR overall, look at his game, a minus .2, so actually below replacement.
Right.
So that's what we're working with. But let's talk about the Gold Glove aspect of it, because if you sign Tucker Barnhart, you're about that defense. His pop time, meaning the time from the pop where the ball makes the pop in your mitt to getting it down to second base, ranked him in the 32nd percentile. So below average, 32nd percentile. His framing was in the 44th percentile. Okay. Also below average. Now, I should say that would have made him the best framing catcher on the Cubs last year. Yan Gomes is in the 33rd percentile, Wilson Contreras in the 25th. But I have to admit, that was lower percentile-wise than I was counting on. So and then for comparison, Gomes has a 50th percentile pop time, Contreras 79 percentile last year, that is. And so we're looking at a guy that's below average pop time significantly, slightly below average framing last year. As I said, he better have some great ideas about what pitches to call, because that is sort of where I'm left with in terms of his value here. And batting wise, I've seen a couple of people, I think, post about there might be something in that bat yet, some upside left. He's 32. His best offensive year was a WRC plus of 90, and that was 6 years ago.
Yeah, so, this is not Travis d'Arnaud. This is not someone who is young and needs a change of scenery. This is someone who we've seen what they can do at the big league level for a long time.
And I've seen a couple of smart people online, Cubs people, say I don't know, maybe there's something you can unlock in that bat. That makes me think these people know and like him personally, because there is no evidence out there to suggest that. And I'm saying that I'm not worked up about a backup catcher signing. As far as backup catchers go, this is fine. My issue is when they're all backup catchers, I guess.
Is there a scenario where, because how old is Yan Gomes?
So Young, I think I'll look it up. I think right about the same age. But Yan Gomes, he's a couple years older, 35. Yan Gomes is 35. Barnhart's 32.
Well, and that's what I don't really understand. And we don't want to belabor the Contreras thing because we've talked about it enough. But Barnhart makes sense as a David Ross. He makes sense as someone's personal catcher. But that also implies that Yan Gomes is going to catch 80 or 90% of the games, which doesn't seem realistic given that, does Barnhart have particularly good splits against righties or lefties? Is that a factor?
I mean, no, one of the splits is better than the other, but I mean, they're bad splits. So I think, I think you're looking at probably a 60-40 timeshare on this, I think. And you comparing him to David Ross is that's a good point. And it's something the Cubs' direction to catching, it makes me think about, but it makes me think this is a meatball opinion that cannot possibly be true. Because if I was looking at this from outside, I would see a team managed by David Ross trying to make all the catchers David Rosses and get it and being no, what you have to understand is that there's catchers that are better in ways that you can't possibly see and no one can possibly explain. And actually,
the old intangibles,
yes, and intangibles are wonderful. But as we watch the Cubs jettison a 3-time All-Star catcher who's younger than both these guys, who is more physically talented than both these guys and way better of a hitter, it's just it is a really curious direction to go with catching that does track with who David Ross was. And I cannot believe this front office would be that swayed by David Ross's opinions to do that. But it is interesting, I guess.
I think one thing about it that's particularly frustrating, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but in my lifetime as a Cubs fan, aside from Wilson Contreras, I've never witnessed a franchise catcher for the Cubs. People talk about Gabby Hartnett, but that's a lot before our time.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Who in our lives has been that good as a Cubs catcher. I mean, you have Giovanni Soto with like the
Uh-huh.
one good year, but when I think of Cubs catchers, I think of this like almost comical list of Scott Service and Joe Girardi and Paul Bako and Coy Hill and just all of these names and names and names and names.
Right, and you're a couple years younger than me, so I mean, like, Girardi was a good catcher, I would say. He made an all-star team. He had a couple of good years. I don't think you would call him really a franchise catcher.
Right.
He and Posada ended up doing the split in with the Yankees during the height of his career. Jody Davis was technically probably had his best year, I think, just before you were born, maybe, or very close to it. I was a baby, but Jody Davis was a very good catcher for the Cubs in the 80s. Michael Barrett was sort of a Contreras-esque sort of like, well, he was an offensive guy, but I had a couple of high level.
I mean, Carlos Zambrano certainly found him offensive.
That's true. Carlos Zambrano thought his intangibles were not good behind the plate to quite an extreme degree. I think that's another thing that's frustrating about losing Contreras is that like a franchise catcher is difficult to find. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to find. And the Cardinals had one for a while, and they just replaced him for $87.5 million over 5 with the guy we had in house. So, it's frustrating, and it seems like, I don't know. I mean, Miguel Amaya hasn't played a full season in years, basically ever. The Cubs' top catching prospect coming up. And
I would understand it so much more if the Cubs had someone who was like ready to come up at that position.
Mm-hmm. And they just don't. Like the guys who they have closest to the majors in that sense is a bunch of outfielders, basically, which is cool. I'm excited for him. Yeah. But the catching position remains a bit of a mystery to me. And I don't know. I think it comes down to me, I feel like I trust the pitchers to be pitchers more than this Cubs team seems to. It seems like they're really putting a lot of eggs in the basket of the catchers make the pitcher, and they help it, of course. But I think they're for my money, I think they're weighing it too much. So,
right. And also part of it that would make sense would be if the Cubs had a rotation that was like mostly young guys, I think you could make even more of a case for needing a veteran presence. But the thing is, more than half of the Cubs rotation is veterans or like soon to be veterans. Like Stroman's been around for a while. Hendricks and Smiley have been around forever. And same with Tyone. Like Tyone is not a young guy. So other than like whatever the combination of Steele and Keegan Thompson and Wisniewski and whoever else you put in that mix, like, that accounts for approximately one spot in the rotation.
Yeah, one or two. And,
starts, like,
right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, but the catching position for the Cubs appears to be settled going into 2023. Yeah. Now it's going to be Gomes, I think, has to be your A, and and Barnhart's going to be your B there.
Right, and I wonder if they'll do with Gomes what they did with Contreras last year, which is they like his bat enough to keep him in the lineup as a DH on the days he doesn't catch. I mean, he is 35, so you're not going to have him play 162 games, but
right.
I don't know. I mean, I liked Yan Gomes last year a lot.
Yes,
I liked him in the capacity that he was on the team in.
I think that's exactly it. I think Yan Gomes was used very well last year. That was sort of a perfect role for him. And having Contreras DH makes sense because Wilson Contreras is a well above average offensive player. Yan Gomes last year had a WRC plus of 73, which is good for a Tucker Barnhart, but it's not good for pretty much anyone else. It is, it is 27% below league average. And you adjust that for catcher a little bit. It's less below average for a catcher. But if you're DHing Yan Gomes, you are not interested in winning. Generally speaking, that should not be your DH spot. Your DH spot could be a Contreras. It could be a number of other people. Yan Gomes should not be DHing more than one, unless you're desperate, really. So, so Adam, tell us about what seems to be an inevitable, imminent other signing that the Cubs are making.
So the talk right now, and perhaps by the time you're listening to it, it has originally happened. Although who can really trust John Heyman after what happened at the winter meeting? But anyway, John Heyman has reported, among other people, that Eric Hosmer former mostly Royal and Padre and a little bit Red Sox, is close to signing with the Cubs, presumably to be their starting first baseman. Obviously there's a lot of speculation about where Mervis fits into this equation and how soon he comes up. But all that to say, if Hosmer signs, he will be the opening day first baseman. Now, Hosmer, let's just start with last year, right? Hosmer is coming off a year in which he had a 1.1 WAR, so better than Tucker Barnhart.
But it was a Tucker Barnhart's career best season. was a 1.1 according to Fangraphs. So.
So we got let's give you the importance of Hosmer last year. 8 home runs, so not a lot of pop there. 44 ribbies. He slugged 382, which is just disturbing.
It's OPS not a real first. Yeah, 382 slugging is like, I don't know if you're Billy Hamilton. That's exciting, I guess.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. And OPS of 716. Now, if you want to get excited about Eric Hosmer, I will let you do that if you would like to. But bear in mind that his best years are definitely behind him. Famously, he signed what now at this moment in time doesn't seem like that big of a deal with the Padres. 8 years, 144 million. But that was coming off of a few years and a career in Kansas City that was really impressive. Now, the big issue with Hosmer of late is that he really doesn't have much pop at all, especially for the position. But in the years between, let's see here, between 2015 and 2019, so that's 3 seasons in Kansas City and his first 2 seasons in San Diego, he hit at minimum 18 home runs per year. His best year, I guess, probably was 2015.
The World Series winning year.
Exactly. So but although in 2017, which was probably why he got paid so much money, that was his best year in terms of OPS. His OPS was 882. In that final year with Kansas City, let's see, 25 home runs, 94 driven in.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Not bad at all. But since then, it has been not so great. Things did not work out very well in San Diego. To be completely honest with you, I didn't even remember that he had been traded to the Red Sox last year.
Yeah, he did a fun thing. I
missed that.
Yeah, so he did a fun thing last year where he exceeded his stolen base total in trades rejected. So he had 0 stolen bases, which is fine, but he rejected 1 trade. It was that Blockbuster Juan Soto trade he was going to be included in, and because he had the right to say no to it, he did, and that sort of boned over Luke Voit, who they were like, all right, fine, take a Voit, and Voit was like, how am I catching strays over here, and had to go over to the Washington Nationals. Meanwhile, Hosmer...
Well, it was unavoidable.
It was unavoidable. There we go. Yes. So yeah, he had that weird, that sort of weird situation come about last year, and the guys in Boston said good things about him. Marcus Stroman's already tweeting about how he thinks Hosmer's an amazing teammate. They played together on that Team USA that won the World Baseball Classic a few years ago. So.
Now, much the same way we talked about the Tucker Barnhart effect, which is like there are things that are in the air that we can't really define, but people like them and they're excited about them. I do think that if you want to get excited about Hosmer for realistic reasons, the main thing to get excited about is his defense, which obviously he's getting older, but he is someone who has won multiple Gold Gloves. You're pairing him now with an infield that is already incredibly good between Swanson and Nico up the middle. So in terms of run prevention, if that is what the Cubs are going for, which it seems like they are, which is the least sexy thing one could go for.
Sure. But, I mean, it's interesting that they're also going for run prevention on offense. It is weird that they're trying to prevent runs everywhere, but yes.
Right. But I do, in terms of like a gamer, which is like a super baseball-y cliche, but like someone who has won, someone who to me, like my opinions on Eric Hosmer really boil down to what I've seen of him in those postseasons, like in 14 and 15. And he seems like someone who cares a lot, and that is the kind of person that you want on a team. So I think it's as realistic as talking about there being something in Barnhart's bat that we haven't seen, but at least with Hosmer, there is a track record of him doing well. And if the Cubs bring him in on what I assume will be a 1 or 2 year deal, then it's much like the Bellingers of the world who have something to prove. So
Yeah, and
that you can dream on, I think.
right, and because San Diego sent Hosmer away before the end of his deal, and so he has been. Hosmer's been waived. This is what this means is that the Cubs signing him would be for the minimum. San Diego would be paying the rest of the money. It's sort of like what the Dodgers are doing with Jason Hayward right now. So the Cubs are getting Eric Hosmer for virtually nothing. It's less than $1 million. It's like 700 some thousand at the minimum. So it doesn't affect payroll at all, which again, it's not that any one signing the Cubs make is a massive problem to me. It's the lack of ambition across the board and how this team is being run as a mid-market team and not the biggest financial giant in the league's worst division. Like that is so it's hard for me to get excited about any of these things, but Hosmer on its own, I saw, some people are freaking out about, and they don't want him to block Mervis. I don't know, cautiously hopeful he doesn't, because, you probably have one at first base, one DHing, and switching that around.
Oh, if Mervis is ready, Hosmer's not going to stand in his way.
No,
I really don't think that's going to be the case.
I really hope not, too. And I don't think it just makes no sense for the organization to do it that way, right? So if anything, maybe it's you have Hosmer. I don't think Mervis should be starting in the minors to start with, but I think it's non-zero chance that he does. Maybe it's a thing where they have Hosmer at first for the beginning of the year to see if the Cubs weirdly get hot, and then Mervis starts out in AAA, and if he keeps hitting, he's going to come up. Mervis, if he doesn't get hurt, is going to be up this year. But also, like, looking at how terrible the Cubs were at first base last year, the projections for Hosmer, I mean, projections are they don't exist, right? They're fake to a point,
right?
But they have him at around a 109 WRC plus, 9% above league average. Sort of as we said for catchers, you have to adjust for the catching position. For first base, you sort of adjust. 109 is better for other positions than it is for first, but it's better than what they had last year. You hope Mervis could be even more than that, obviously, but it looks like that's what's going to happen. So,
yeah, I don't know. It just continues to feel like, even with the Swanson signing and Tyone and a few of the other moves the Cubs have made, that they're still at this moment setting up a season where it's like, we could compete if everything breaks right. But the thing is, generally things don't break right. Or at least not all of them do. So if you're putting yourself in a position where you're relying on a bunch of best case scenarios to win games, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, it seems like they just keep doing that, over and over, and that leaves us here. One thing to note: Eric Hosmer's wife was technically on more late night comedy shows than either one of us last year. Oh. She had a bunch of Gutfeld appearances, and on the Jesse Waters show on Fox News. She is a on-air person over there, so she does not like Colin Kaepernick's kneeling, and she hosted something what you're called saying the Patriot Awards, I think.
So Eric Hosmer will play with a Tucker, and she'll play with a different one.
That's what it is. Exactly. They just want to go where the Tuckers are, the Hosmer family. So congrats to them on pulling that off, and maybe Hayden Wisniewski can hit them up and get some jump start on his future media career through those connects. But that's
it is our January 6th week episode, so it's fitting to.
It is. So that's what we got for the new Cubs news, and our first real Cubs news of the new year is it looks like Barnhart's there, catching is settled, Eric Hosmer's there, and there's still a couple of free agents out there, but nothing that Trey Mancini I guess is the biggest bat out there, but
right,
it seems like Hosmer. It certainly
if you get Hosmer, you don't get Mancini.
It seems like likely not. It shouldn't preclude it money wise in any way, but it just seems like it most likely does. So, I don't know. That's. that's what we got. Is there anything else for the moment before we look into the crystal ball?
I just wanted to take a moment out of the episode to thank DraftKings for sponsoring us 10 months later. So thank you. We did get the money.
The real ones now. Yes, DraftKings did finally pay us. I forget
That
if
felt like they were going through their accounting at the end of the year and they were like, oh, shit.
Yeah, we forgot one. I looked up. What if we charged them interest on when they were supposed to pay us? They should owe us like 12 more cents or something than what
I think you're right.
they paid. So they can see. I'll see their ass in court. Yeah, Adam, do you want to? So since we said we sort of know where we're at going into 2023 at this point, and we've talked a lot about it.
Yeah.
It's not the most exciting conversation beyond what we've already done. So we thought, let's take a look in the crystal ball. It's the new year. What if it was the next new year?
Yeah.
What are you seeing? Let's start talking as if we're doing the Happy New Year, Cubs fans, 2024.
Well, it is a happy new year, Kevin, and I'll tell you why. It's because in the past year, before spring training even began, the Cubs actually, they proved us wrong, and they signed Ian Happ and Nico Horner to reasonably team-friendly extensions, which is great.
I mean, that's crazy. So these are guys that are already Chicago Cubs, and you're telling me they decided to pay them money to let them stay around.
I was under the impression that it wasn't possible, but apparently it is, because that happened. So heading into the year, we were already feeling pretty good about that. It did happen.
Yes.
But here's the thing. It progressed a little bit like the dreaded 2021, where the Cubs looked pretty good at first, then they looked not so good, and they headed into the All-Star break around 500, and we all were getting ready to say goodbye to some of our friends again, getting ready for some people to get flipped. But you know what? Hashtag Jed's League. He pulled it off. He traded for and immediately signed to an extension Rafael Devers. The Cubs went on a real run in the second half, and they ended up getting one of the wild card spots. Can you believe it?
It is actually pretty tough for me to believe, but that's amazing, and that makes me feel I got good feelings coming out of that kind of season. So he traded for, extended. Now, do we have any idea what he traded for Devers?
What he traded for Devers, some people aren't going to feel great about this, but it included Brennan Davis and Keegan Thompson and some future draft picks.
That's amazing, because in the year I'm looking at, Adam, a lot of that. First of all, maybe I'll tease that. Tell me anything else that's coming out of the Adam Mamawala 2023. Well,
the Cubs actually got out of the wild card round. They did lose in the second round, but we were all so happy that they got there that we were actually okay with it. We were like, you know what, this team is actually trying again.
I mean, that is amazing stuff, and if that is how this year goes, I'm sitting here on the first show of 2024 with $40 in new DraftKings money, and I am pretty excited about how all that went. I mean, I would have I would at that point in a vacuum have absolutely no complaints.
Oh, I forgot the part about how Kevin and I got in a brawl with Cardinals fans in London. That also happened this summer.
It did, and we were detained for a while, and it's not as easy as it used to be to get out of other countries and back to this one. So that was dicey. But our episodes from a London jail were the highest rated we'd ever had, and really put us on the map.
All right. So what are you telling me about what happened this past year?
Well, I think we were looking at some of the same crystal ball here. Just I don't know if there was a smudge here or there on the ball that made me see slightly different things. But what I saw was the Cubs also around the deadline getting into a 3-team deal. And what that the 3-team deal was with Toronto and Boston. It's weird, they're in the same division, whatever. But Boston was on the way down and Toronto's on the way up, so we got teams looking for different things. And what they did was Bellinger bounced back a little bit, and the Cubs sent Marcus Stroman back home to Toronto to his original team. He was going to opt out at the end of the year. Marcus Stroman and Bellinger go to Toronto. Toronto sent some of their higher end prospects to Boston to complete that part of the deal. The Cubs also sent Brennan Davis to Boston and acquired Rafael Devers, whom they then extended. So I saw the exact same thing. I did not see the Cubs making the wild card, but what I did see was them get that middle of the order bat in his age 26 season, left-handed, which the Cubs don't have a lot of. And yeah, they gave up Brendan Davis, and that hurts. Obviously, he was the MVP of the Futures game with a couple homers a couple years ago, and the Cubs haven't had really an upside prospect like that in a while. But now they do, because as we see, after they also extended Ian Happ and locked up that left field, that Gold Glove left fielder with a good bat for a while, you've got Happ in left, you've got Suzuki in right, and the Cubs' top prospects are all outfielders at this point. So they had there's not spots for Brendan Davis, PCA, recovering Canario, and a future superstar in Kevin Alcantara. So someone had to go. Brendan Davis was that. So we're starting off the next year with PCA playing center field. And if we're talking about our New Year's episode, not only do we have Rafael Devers, who signed at this point, but I've crunched the numbers, and they have a lot of contracts coming off the books. The Cubs decided to turn down Yan Gomes' $6 million option. It was heartbreaking, but the $16 million option on Hendricks was not picked up either. And Marcus Stroman's money's off the books. He was going to opt out anyway. They used him in the trade to get Devers. So with all that off the books, the Cubs are sitting at under $80 million on next year's payroll. Now that goes up a little bit with Nico's extension, a little bit with Haps, with Devers' extension. But what they do is they sign Yu Darvish in free agency to bring him back home. Yu Darvish, throw $25 million at him, you got more than enough space. And this is where things get really smudgy, because I'm looking at the numbers, and there's no reason that this couldn't happen. You could give this guy $50 million and still be well under the $237 million CBT line.
You're about to say Shohei Ohtani.
It's Shohei Ohtani. It is, and you're still under you're telling me that you are still under the CBT threshold by extending Rafael Devers after you trade for him, getting Yu Darvish back as a veteran starter in that rotation to sort of replace where Stroman was, and Ohtani, who is two players in one. And I do think there's no chance. I mean, I think there's no chance of signing Ohtani, but on top of that, I think there's really no chance if you don't get a Devers in your lineup before that, because he's not going to want to go somewhere that keeps losing. He's already got that in Anaheim.
Wow. All right. Well, my big question. So Devers just re-signed for 1 year, correct?
Yeah, 1 year, 17.5.
Do you think you would have to give up would it take, I know obviously Stroman and Bellinger, basically you get them for half a year, but would it take two big leaguers and a top minor leaguer?
So that's only in the 3-team deal thing, to sort of get Toronto to give up enough prospects so Boston's happy.
But we don't get any. We just get Devers in that situation.
Yeah, maybe you get like a piece back, a middle level piece from Toronto. But to your question, I don't think it would take, if you're just strictly looking at what Cubs give up and what Boston gives up, I don't think you'd have to give up Stroman, Bellinger, and Davis to get a half a year of Rafael Devers. Right. So it may, and
it also only makes sense if you trade for him and extend him. That's
exactly. Yeah, because there's no point in bringing Rafael Devers on for a half a year as the Cub from the Cubs' perspective here. And I don't know how you get to a point negotiations wise where you feel confident that you know what his parameters are, you know what he'll take as an extension, but it's time to spend a lot of money, not just all the backup catchers and your number 4 shortstop in the class of 4 shortstops, who we're happy to have, but it's time to get your number 1 targets in multiple positions. So yeah.
And as we record this on January 4th, 2024, I could not be more excited about the fact that the 11-5 Bears are heading into Week 17, already locked in for a playoff spot.
Oh, it's very exciting. The trade down that they did to acquire a great pass rusher and a wide receiver in that with 2 first-round picks was amazing, and shoring up that offensive line in free agency was brilliant. And team polls, baby, polls and fields. That's what it's all about. Which are actually very good football field names.
They are, yeah. That's well, I hadn't thought about the poll. I mean, Fields is obvious, but polls I hadn't thought about.
Yeah,
I mean, the Bears do have a fraught history with polls.
Yeah, the doinking has the doinking's always an issue. But yeah, that's our first episode back, folks. First episode back on Away Games. If you haven't given us a rating and a review yet, hey, that would be a lovely New Year's resolution for you, for us. And we are at Away Games Pod on Instagram, on Twitter, most active on Twitter, and all those things. And Adam,
we are most active on the site that is disintegrating. So once again set ourselves up for success.
That's possibly the most morally corrupt at this point, and also yes, absolutely disintegrating. Yeah. I've lost hundreds of followers just in the past couple of weeks, so it's been a fun bleed out over there. But thanks for listening. Any parting thoughts, Adam?
I got nothing.
I also got nothing. Bye.